Hi, third graders. We are back with our paired selection. Yesterday, we read our paired selection for the first time. It was an expository text called Sharing Cultures. Remember, an expository text is a book about real facts that teaches you something. So, today we are going to go back into our paired selection and just look at parts of the book to answer some questions about them. So let's get started by just listening to this part of the passage about Pat Mora, and then we'll go off to the side and answer some questions. Make sure that you have your Reader's Writer's Companion book with you and opened up to page 20. You'll also need a pencil. If you need more time to grab your companion book, you can pause the movie and grab that and then come back. And as we're going through the text and answering the questions, if you need more time to do that, again, feel free to pause and start again when you're ready. With that said, let's listen to Pat Mora Loves Books.
Sharing Cultures. Pat Mora loves books. Pat Mora has a special word for how she feels about books. She calls it book joy. Born in El Paso, Texas in 1942, Pat learned to love books and reading from her mother. Books are magic to Pat. I wouldn't be me without books, she says. Pat grew up in a bilingual home. That means she and her family spoke both English and Spanish. Pat is proud of her culture. She has written more than 36 children's books. Many of them are written in both English and Spanish. Pat uses her stories and poems to share her culture. She works hard to share her love of books with children. Every year in April, many libraries and schools in America celebrate Dia. Dia is the nickname for Children's Day, Book Day. Dia means day in Spanish. Children get together at libraries, schools, and parks to celebrate. It's like a big book fiesta or party.
All right, now that our memories are refreshed and we have listened to the passage again, let's go over and answer some of these questions. The first question says, reread and use the prompts to take notes in the text. So that's just prompting us before we get into the questions. So this is telling us that we're going to reread parts of the text to take notes on the page and in when we get over here on the lines. All right, so the first question says, reread paragraphs 1 and 2, and they have them numbered for us. Remember, we can tell where a new paragraph is because they start with this indent, this large space, and then all the sentences go until we see another large indent, and that indicates a new paragraph has started. So we have the paragraphs already labeled for us. So we're going to reread paragraphs 1 and 2. And it says, how does the author help you to understand how Pat Mora feels about books? Underline text evidence. So text evidence is when you go back into the story and you're able to find the answer in the text. That's how you can prove that you know the answer is correct. So once it's underlined, so make sure your pencils are ready. I'm going to use the tool on the computer, and we're just going to reread until we find how the author helps us to understand how Pat feels about books. Pat Mora has a special word for how she feels about books. Ooh, I can tell this is going to be part of my answer. Look, it's a right there question, right there answer. Part of the question, how she feels about books, is right in the text. Pat Mora has a special word for how she feels about books. She calls it book joy. Well, boys and girls, I'm going to underline those two sentences because that is clearly telling me how she feels about them. Book joy. We know the word joy means happiness. So that we're going to keep reading, see if we can find any other evidence, but I'm pretty sure we found it, but it's always good to keep reading and check, as I said, to read paragraphs 1 and 2. Born in El Paso, Texas in 1942, Pat learned to love books and reading from her mother. Books are magic to Pat. Oh, that sounds like some more text evidence to me how she feels about it. It says that books are magic to Pat. So let's underline that too, because that's a strong feeling that they really like books. I wouldn't be me without books. Oh, I would say this is more text evidence because she's claiming that she wouldn't be herself if she didn't have books. She's basically saying they are who she is. They're a part of her. All right. The next question, let's read that. It says reread paragraphs 3 and 4. So that's 3 and 4. These are slightly bigger paragraphs. Talk with a partner about how Pat Mora shares her culture with others. Circle text evidence. Okay, so they brought it to my attention with dark lettering called bold that we need to circle, not underline. So I'm going to switch so I can circle. So the question again we're looking for is how Pat Mora shares her culture with others. Let's read. Pat grew up in a bilingual home. That means she and her family spoke both English and Spanish. Well, that's really cool. I think a lot of our students in our classrooms can speak both English and Spanish. That's an amazing talent and a skill that you'll have for the rest of your life. It's very beneficial to be bilingual and speak more than one language. Pat is proud of her culture. She has written more than 36 children's books. Many of them are written in both English and Spanish. So, reading this third paragraph, remember, we're looking for how she shares her culture with others. I would say that her writing her stories in both English and Spanish is an amazing way for her to share her culture with others. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to circle that part of the paragraph because she's using both Spanish and English which is part of her culture, both of those languages. Okay. Pat uses her stories and poems to share her culture. Oh, look at that. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we can say that she uses both English and Spanish to share about her culture, but she also writes the stories and poems about it. Okay, so it's not just the language that she's using, but it's the stories too. Let's just keep reading to see if we can find any more. She works hard to share her love of books with children. Every year in April, many libraries and schools in America celebrate DIA. DIA is the nickname for Children's Day, Book Day. DIA means day in Spanish. Children get together at libraries, schools, and parks to celebrate. It's like a big book fiesta or party. So I think this paragraph, this section of the book is looking pretty good with all of our text evidence marked. Let's move over to the next half of the story. Let's listen to that before we get started on the questions.
Heroes and History. Kadir Nelson was born in Washington, D.C. in 1974. When he was 3 years old, he picked up a pencil and started drawing. Then, when he turned 11, he spent the summer with his uncle. His uncle was an artist and teacher. Kadir says that summer changed his life. Kadir is inspired by brave and honest leaders. He sometimes paints African American heroes he admires. such as Martin Luther King Jr. He also paints great athletes and everyday heroes, such as dads taking their children to the beach. Kadir wants people to feel good when they look at his art. His paintings are colorful and real. They burst with action. Kadir says he has always been an artist. Sharing how he sees the world is part of who he is.
So this passage was about Kadir Nelson, who is an illustrator. And the heading here was Heroes and History. So the first question here says reread paragraphs 5 and 6. So we're going to look for our answers here and here. How does the author help you understand how Kadir felt about spending the summer with his uncle? All right, let's go back and reread. Kadir Nelson was born in Washington, D.C. in 1974. When he was 3 years old, he picked up a pencil and started drawing. Then, when he turned 11, he spent the summer with his uncle. His uncle was an artist and teacher. Kadir says that summer changed his life. So when I'm looking for my answer for this question, the question was, how does the author, the person who wrote this passage, help us to understand how Kadir felt about his uncle? Well, he starts talking about his uncle in this sentence. His uncle was an artist and teacher. And it also says, Kadir says that summer changed his life. So the fact that he is talking about his uncle with such high esteem, with such respect, tells me that his uncle being an artist and a teacher, and the fact that Kadir grew up to be an artist, this does tell me that he really did have a major influence on his life, seeing as he grew up to be an illustrator himself. So I'm going to circle these two sentences, as my text evidence for that question. And then I'm going to hop over here and I'm going to type in the answer. So in the passage, or let's simplify that, in the text, Kadir says that the summer with his uncle changed his life. All right. So go ahead and write that in the side here. In the in the text, Kadir says that the summer with his uncle changed his life. Okay. And then down here it says circle 2 details that support your answer. We already did that. We were ahead of the game. I did circle the 2 sentences. All right. So after you have that written in, let's get to the next question. It says reread paragraph 7. Ooh, that's down here. How does the author help you visualize Kadir's paintings? Underline the text. Okay. So, how does the author help us visualize? Remember, visualize means that you are able to picture what is going on in the story. You're able to picture that in your mind, in your brain, kind of like a mind movie. So we're going to look for words that the author used to help us get that mind movie going. Kadir wants people to feel good when they look at his art. His paintings are colorful and real. This is very descriptive. He's telling us about his paintings, saying that they're colorful and they're real. I'm going to underline that. That seems like that's very descriptive, because now when I'm thinking of his paintings, I'm not just thinking of a black outline drawing. I'm not just thinking of, something that's very boring. I'm thinking of something that's very colorful, bright, realistic looking. Let's keep reading. They burst with action. Oh, that's some more. I should have just kept underlining there. They are bursting with action. Kadir says he has always been an artist. Sharing how he sees the world is part of who he is. So I would say that this is our text evidence, and we underlined it. So I'm going to leave that there. Let's move on to our next question. Why is heroes and history a good heading for this section? Draw a box around text evidence. Write your answer here. Well, I'm going to think about that for a bit, because this person that they're talking about, Kadir Nelson, he wasn't, what we would typically think of a hero. But it doesn't have to be some grand idea for the world, but people can have individual heroes in their lives. So I think what I'm seeing here in this first paragraph, it talks about how his uncle changed his life. So that was one of his heroes. But in paragraph 6, let's reread that, because that talks about some of those big time heroes like I was talking about. It says, Kadir is inspired by brave and honest leaders. Ooh, I'm starting to get a connection. He sometimes paints African American heroes he admires, such as Martin Luther King Jr. He also paints great athletes and everyday heroes, such as dads taking their children to the beach. This is such a great paragraph that connects to this heading, because just like I said, you have some of the heroes that are great, big, amazing people that our entire nation knows about, like Martin Luther King Jr. And then you have those everyday heroes like his uncle, and like dads or moms, or, family members that have changed your individual lives. So the question was, how does the heading make a good title for this section? And I think that it really comes back to this, pretty much this whole paragraph. So it wants us to draw a box around the text evidence. So let's go ahead and we're going to pretty much draw a box around this whole paragraph, I would say. There we go. Go ahead and do that. And then it says write your answer here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our answer here. So we can say that the author writes about important people like, we're going to put MLK because that's short for Martin Luther King Jr. MLK, athletes, and everyday heroes. All right, so you can go ahead and write that in. The author writes about important people like MLK, athletes, and everyday heroes. All right, boys and girls, I hope you have enjoyed reading about Pat Mora, the author, and Kadir Nelson, the illustrator. If you need more time, like I said, you can always rewind the video, go back, pause, play, re-listen, and make sure that you're filling in your companion book. All right, boys and girls, bye for now.